Welcome to another edition of the Official Jets podcast powered by Amazon Web Services. On today's episode, EA caught up with the general manager himself, Joe Douglas, one-on-one and talked about this Jets draft, his first draft as general manager, and where this roster is right now as it stands on April 29th. And EA, before we hear from the architect himself, how do you feel like he went about his first draft as general manager, especially when you consider the unusual circumstances, to say the least?
Green's patient, calculating, well thought out. I thought the Jets, to a man, they raved about the communication heading up to the draft. Their preparation was on point. I think the collaboration between Joe Douglas and his personnel staff and Adam Gase and the coaching staff was tremendous. I think the guys felt very good heading into the weekend. And then Joe Douglas had every reason to feel very good about improving his roster after the weekend. That his first draft class as general manager in the New York Jets, 9 players. And he also traded for one. So yeah, I consider it a 10-person class, but I just thought Joe was patient. And the other thing that he did, he never reached. That's what it felt like throughout the draft, Greens. And we saw him make 3 trades. So we thought going into it, yeah, he'd probably make a trade or 2, but 3 trades, very interesting. So, and when you trade down, Greens, you have to have confidence in your selection of players and the prep that you've had, because when you trade down, that means that some players are going to obviously go off the board. So you have to have a group of players you're comfortable taking. And I think Joe Douglas has every reason to feel very good about what transpired.
Let's hear from the head man himself before we talk about this roster anymore. Here he is, Joe Douglas, one-on-one.
Joe, how special was your first draft as general manager of the New York Jets?
Oh, it was great. It was a great process. I think the best part was getting in with our scouts and our coaching staff and having that week of meetings and, hearing everybody's rankings and hearing everybody's reports and the discussions that we had that led us into last weekend's draft. I thought it was a great process, and everything worked smoothly. We were able to upgrade the talent of this team.
First virtual draft in NFL history. Your wife Shannon offered to keep the kids in the basement, but you declined. When Addison hugged you, when Addie hugged you, and Tommy and Lulu were there, can you describe that moment?
Yeah, that was surreal. They wanted to go down the basement because they didn't want to be too loud, but it's such a unique thing to have your family this close to you during the draft, and with them being in the room opposite, and then having the call with Makai and how excited he was and his family was. And so that gets you fired up. And then in walks your children, and they're hugging you and telling you how proud they are, and you've worked so hard for a moment like this, and it really put things in perspective. It really hit me like this is truly a special evening.
Speaking of perspective, you had an emphasis on the offensive line, a need for speed and playmakers around your quarterback, Sam Darnold, the quest for position flexibility, and you wanted to shore up some needs. Just how far has this roster come since January when you look at it from the perspective not only is just the draft, but free agency as well?
I think from the start, our focus was going to be to improve the protection and playmakers on offense. I feel like we addressed that in free agency, and then the draft was another opportunity to address it as well. And, the pieces that we were able to bring in over the weekend, both offense and defense, the explosive playmakers, guys that can play multiple spots, what we're able to do in free agency, offense and defense, bringing back some key players from last year's team. I feel good about where we are. Go after free agency in the draft, but we also know we have a lot of work to do as well. Any opportunity we can to shore up any position group, we're going to look into it.
Mekhi Becton, when did he jump on your radar during the pre-draft process?
Makai jumped on my radar probably around October. Our scouts send in a little stock up, stock down report every week, just from the places that they've been, the players they looked, and Makai was a stock up guy, and scouts were excited about him and as a possible underclassman that was going to come out early and just going out to practice and seeing how big he was and how he moved around. So just seeing that report from our area scouts and over the top scouts, and then putting the tape on. I think the first game I watched was the Notre Dame game, and you just see this hulking left tackle that moves so easy, and he's able to just snap defenders' heads back every time he hits them, and he lifts guys off there, in uncomfortable positions and putting guys on the ground. And it's eye-opening, and says, okay, this guy has some unusual traits that get you fired up at the tackle spot. So that was really the genesis of how Makai got on my radar.
Joe, I know the film is so important, and that doesn't lie, but when a guy goes to Indianapolis and you're sitting there at the combine, 6'7", 364 pounds, and he runs a 40-yard dash in 5.1 seconds, have you ever seen anything like that before?
Yeah, you knew he was a good athlete from watching the tape. You knew he could. You knew he could slot his feet. You knew he could mirror defend edge rushers in pass pro. But when you saw the 40, it just confirmed everything you saw on tape, that this is a big athletic man that can do a lot of things. So it was certainly impressive to see a man that size move that well. But it wasn't out of character from anything we saw on tape.
Okay, right prior to the drafts, I think it was the day prior, you gave Makai a call. Can you give us the nature of that conversation and why you came out of that feeling good? If that guy's on the board, he might be a New York Jet.
Yeah. With some of the things that had come out, there were questions that, we wanted answers on. And, I can tell you that the conversation that I had with Makai was a great conversation. And, there was upfront. He was upfront. There was honesty. He was authentic. He took ownership, and it was a really good conversation, and just being able to spend a little extra time with him one-on-one on a FaceTime call. It was a good experience.
I'm not going to go through the draft player by player. I talked to you about a bunch of these guys over the weekend, but when you think about a foundation pillar, perhaps, in Makai Becton, developmental piece along the offensive line, a playmaking receiver, two versatile, highly skilled athletes for the defense, backups for a pair of signature players on offense, a pair of cornerbacks, and a punter, 6 team captains in all. How do you think this class of 2020 potentially can help build the foundation of what you're trying to do here?
Yeah, we'll see down the road how all these guys pan out. We're obviously excited about the character and the ability we were able to add. I think all these guys have great opportunity to come in and compete and really make a name for themselves with this training camp. I'm excited about our process, how it played out, but this is a group. We were fortunate. We were able to acquire some extra picks and trades, and we were fortunate on how the board fell, and we were able to get the right guys that are good players. So they're gonna have opportunity. That's all you can ever ask for, and each of them have great opportunity to make an impact on this year's roster.
Just how strong has the collaboration been throughout the offseason, despite this unprecedented time, with not only you and your personnel staff, but your staff with Adam Gase and the coaching staff?
Yeah, there's so many good people in this building, and I know I've mentioned Murph and Steve and the IT group and how they really helped us with the video teleconferencing and getting our coaching staff and personnel staff set up. But then, when you have guys like Dan Zbajewski who's our director of who's our director of personnel coordinator. He does such a phenomenal job of getting everybody on the same page. And so when we were able to get on the same page with the Teams app, get everybody in check in terms of the video conferencing with the players, and then come together for this week of draft meetings that we had with the coaches, and everyone was able to just put their opinion out there. And if you did the work, you get a chance to speak your mind on the player. And we're always not going to agree, but we're going to hash it out respectfully, and we're going to try to come to the best decision for the New York Jets moving forward. So I think it was a good process. I think everybody was all in, from a collaboration standpoint.
You knew Adam Gase going into this, and then obviously you had last year to kind of watch the coaching staff and their players in action. But just how well have things worked between you two guys this offseason?
No, it's been good. I mean, we've been able to either get on the Teams app or call each other just about every day and check in and, bounce ideas off each other. And, these meetings were great, during the week, and then the strategy meetings that we had leading up to the draft. We had a lot of conversation, and even me and Coach, we didn't always see eye to eye on exact rankings, but we talked it out. We had great discussions, and I think both of us were really happy on how this year's draft turned out.
Joe, what do you think about the support you've put around Sam Darnold? We oftentimes have talked about the offensive line, and that was one area where you really emphasize. But you bring in Rashad Perryman in free agency. You draft Denzel Mims in the second round. You already have Jameson Crowder here on campus, so to speak. Your tight ends include Ryan Griffin, who kind of did everything for you last year. You're hoping to get Chris Herndon back at 100% 2020. You still have one of the most talented running backs in football in Le'Veon Bell. You add LaMichael Pirine to the mix. How much better do you feel about the offensive weapons around Sam right now?
Yeah, I think I feel good about where we're heading up front in terms of the O-line. I feel like also that a lot of people forgot about Chris Herndon and how good of a player that he is. A little bit he was snake bit last year with the suspension and then the injury coming off of suspension. But you're talking about a tight end as a rookie that I want to say was the number 2 tight end in all of the NFL in explosive plays as a rookie. So, not having him last year, it hurt. And so really excited to get Chris back and pair, with him, with Griffin and Ryan. Ryan was a great addition. And then a young guy like Wesco. So feel excited to see these tight ends come back. And, the depth that we've added at wide receiver, the depth that we've added at O-line, the depth that we've added at running back. I'm just excited to get these guys on the field, and hopefully, we need to get on the field and get some chemistry. But there's talent that excites you.
I talked to you about this in Indianapolis, and you said the need for speed. You addressed that on both sides of the ball, specifically the wide receiver position. Rashad Perryman, bring him in a free agency, and then Denzel Mims. We talked about him over the weekend, a long strider, but both those guys have sub 4.4 speed. So how potentially can that help Sam out? Because I know you've mentioned it before, and Adam has too, is that you can't have the stress all the time of matriculating the ball down the field, so to speak, with 12-play drives. Sometimes you got to score quickly in this league.
Yeah, no, we talked a little bit at the combine about the vertical aspect of an offense and how we saw the two teams that competed in the Super Bowl, how both of their offense feature a vertical passing game and how much pressure that puts on a defense. And so when you have guys like Perryman, like Rashad, like Denzel, who are two big guys that run really fast on the outside, those guys can put a lot of pressure on the defense. You have to be on alert for them when it comes to the vertical passing game. And so the hope is that opens up a lot of free space for Jameson, for Lev, for Herndon, for Griff, for Wesco. So you're hoping that this speed can really open up the door in the pass game for a lot of other people.
Last question about the offensive line real quick. How big was it for you in Baltimore that you had a Hall of Famer at left tackle in Jonathan Ogden? And then in Philadelphia, you had Jason Peters, who I think is going to definitely get Hall of Fame consideration. We're not going to put any kind of projections on Makai Becton or anybody for that matter. But with that being said, how much can potentially a guy who has talent like that help an offensive line?
Yeah, you just mentioned two unbelievable players. Both. J.O. is a first ballot Hall of Famer. JP is going to be a Hall of Famer. Those when you have a tackle like that, a left tackle like that, you go into a game very relaxed in terms of protection. Just having been in Baltimore as long as I was, you went into games and you really didn't have to worry about the other team's best pass rusher unless they moved him to the other side of the formation, which oftentimes they did. So when you have a tackle like that, it makes you sleep a little better at night before a game. I'm not gonna compare Makai to those two guys. I mean, Makai's got to blaze his own trail, but you're excited about the ability. You're excited about the traits that he has, the mentality that he plays with. And we feel like he's a guy that could be a difference maker for us up front.
Where do you think this team is at defensively? You resigned Jordan Jenkins and Brian Poole, among others, but then in the draft, you get a pair of highly athletic players who provide speed and versatility. And that's the thing with all these acquisitions we're talking about with Joe Douglas right now is the multiplicity of positions that these guys can play. Ashton Davis and Jabari Zaninga, I think, should be perfect fits for a defense that employs so many different packages with Greg Williams.
Excited about both those guys. Ashton brings speed, ball skills, versatility. He's a guy you can throw the tape on. You can see him line up over a slot receiver and cover him in man coverage. You can see him line up as a high safety and range over to the sideline to make a play on the ball. You can see him attack the alleys in the run game. You can see him blitz. So what we have with Jamal, with Marcus, and adding Ashton, letting him compete. The hope is that he can provide that kind of versatility and playmaking to our back end. And a guy like Jabari Zuniga, who battled injury this year, but another guy, he can play D end. He can reduce inside in nickel packages to line up over a guard. His suddenness, his explosiveness off the ball, his motor, his play temperament, how hard he plays, that jumps off the tape. So with those two guys, we feel like those are guys that can line up in different positions on any given play, and based on matchups, and help us. So we're excited to add those guys.
Something that's flying under the radar here, I think, externally at least, not internally, is the emphasis you put on special teams too. Ashton Davis was a very good kickoff returner at California. LaMichael Pirine contributing on teams at Florida, and then we talked about it. Brant Boyer stood on the table for his punter, Braden Mann, and you guys picked him up in the 6th round. So shouldn't we think in terms of not just the way you're attacking offense and defense, but where some of these acquisitions will help and factor into special teams play?
Yeah, I mean, the best teams are balanced teams across the board in all 3 phases, and they have depth. And, we feel good about the depth we've added on special teams. We feel good about some guys that can compete to be contributors next year on special teams. I know Brant's fired up about a few guys, but also, like you mentioned on Man, a guy that we're excited about. I mean, and the things that he can do with his directional kicks, the leg strength, the ability to kick off if need be. So another guy that can really do more than one thing.
The virtual offseason program underway, Joe. What's going to be the challenge ahead for, we talked about Sam Darnold a little bit, a lot of new pieces on offense, but we don't know when you guys will be able to see the field just like anybody in the National Football League. But what do you think about your head coach, Adam Gase, talking about he's got to become an extension of the coaching staff now?
Yeah. These virtual meetings, these virtual OTAs, they're big, and just having the opportunity to jump into a couple different meetings, seeing the interaction that's going back and forth between the players and the coaches, going over last year's tapes, going over the things that we could do better, going over just the day one basic fundamentals. There's an energy, there's a lot of hungry guys. So I think the energy is there, the hunger is there, and now the next step is us getting together and building the chemistry. And so that's obviously there's uncertainty with what's going on around the world, but I think that's the next step when we get together again, is to really start building that chemistry that takes good teams that can take you from being a good team to a great team. And so we've got a lot of work to do, like we said, but I think that's going to be a big thing for us moving forward when we're able to get back together under one roof.
Do you think you guys took a step forward with the culture here in the offseason because you targeted specific people in free agency, not just the roles on the field, but what they would bring inside your room? And then you followed it up with, in the draft, you selected 6 team captains out of your 9 picks.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited about the character that we added. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier. We're excited about the ability and we're excited about the character. And, we just have to get everybody in the locker room and let that character show in the locker room, in the building, on the field. So just excited to get everybody back, to get everyone together. But yeah, I think we drafted and brought in through free agency passionate guys that love football. And I think we're going to see that really show when we get back together.
And final question here. Do you think Adam Gase talks always in terms of, we want to be a team that gets to the tournament and competes for a championship? I'm not asking for any playoff predictions, which would be ridiculous or anything like that. More so, do you like where you're at, and do you think you've taken a step closer and now it's got to come together, like you were mentioning, chemistry wise? We get on the field and see what happens, but this roster is coming together the way you envisioned it.
Yeah. We talked a little bit earlier about the character, about the ability. That's really the baseline. That's the foundation. And then we add the chemistry of all being together. And then, I think once we do all those things and we actually we start stringing good practices, good periods, good practices together, good weeks together, good games together. And then that's when the last thing comes, and that's the confidence, that we can go out and compete week in, week out with any team in the National Football League. And once we have that chemistry and confidence, it's going to be a powerful thing. We've just got to get together and build that, and, to get to our ultimate goal, we have to get in the tournament, and that's, you're not going to win a Super Bowl unless you get into the dance. So, and if you're not trying to win a Super Bowl every year, you shouldn't be in this business. So, that's our goal every year, is to try to punch our ticket in this dance and make some noise, but again, like I said, we've got a lot of work to do.
EA, great insight from Joe Douglas as always. And let's take a look at where this roster is now. This defense has a chance to be kind of scary when you think about it, with CJ Mosley and Jamal and a revamped secondary. And we'll see what happens with Avery Williamson, how he comes back from his ACL injury. But, this defense has a chance to really do something nice here in 2020, I think.
I think it's going to be very strong. I don't even think it's an argument. CJ Mosley and Jamal Adams are 2 of the best players at their respective positions in the National Football League. Okay. That defense it should take a step forward. Remember, it's year 2 for them too. And now Sam Darnold will be staying in the same offensive system, and the Jets have gotten better around him. We'll have to see how it all plays out at the wide receiver position. Thing is Sam, they have embraced him offensively, putting him in position potentially to be successful. Now, how's it all going to play out with this virtual offseason program and when these guys actually can get on the field, and Darnold's going to have to be the extension of the coaching staff. But yeah, I think there is reason for optimism right now. Remember, this team won 7-9 last year. You don't get medals for going 7-9, but they headed in the offseason with a 6-2 stretch. And now I think everybody you would talk to externally would even admit that this roster looks a lot better on paper than it did when it closed the year in Buffalo.
I absolutely agree with that. And that is how we will close out this episode of the Official Jets podcast, powered by Amazon Web Services. EA and I back tomorrow with a special edition of the podcast. Stay tuned.